Hi everybody, welcome back. Tony again here with Shinsho Yoga. And before I get into this week's video, I apologize if my voice is a little hoarse. I have sadly had a bad cold over the past week or so, and I am now at the tail end of it. And it was a rough one. It was a rough one. So I apologize in advance for sounding like I've been out partying all night. But for this week's video, I'd like to talk about a concept that it's okay to be bored, that it's okay to be uncomfortable. When I was a boy, I remember that there were times I would say to my mother, I would say, "Mama, I'm bored." Right? You played with all your toys, and maybe there's no friends around, or maybe my sister didn't want to play, or whatever, everything like that. I'd say, "Mama, I'm bored." And my mother's response was the same every time. "So what? Be bored." Now, as a little boy, that's the last thing I wanted to hear was, "So what? Be bored." Or as I later on, she would say, "It's okay to be bored," and walk away. Of course, as a kid, I didn't want to hear that. I wanted to be entertained. I wanted something to do, something fun. But those words have rang in my head throughout my life, and as I've gotten older, have become truer, and I have more of an understanding of what she meant. Not necessarily that my mother was trying to deliver any type of spiritual message to me when she said that, but being okay and being okay being bored or being okay being uncomfortable is very important, as we don't grow unless we're uncomfortable. Our world today, we like to search out comfort all the time. If you live in the West, I live in America. It's quite a comfortable society for many. There's some, there's plenty of people who struggle. But even me, I am not a wealthy person by any means, I still have a relatively comfortable life, meaning that I have a home that has heat and air conditioning. It's got hot water. It's got electricity. I have the internet. I'm able to put videos on YouTube. I have a washing machine and a dryer. Right? I don't have to go down to the river and beat my clothes with rocks, or anything like that. There's supermarkets to go to. I have a refrigerator. You know, I've done work in Africa many times, and there's a lot of people who don't have any of that. They don't have electricity. Their homes are made from brick with a tin roof. There is no refrigerator. There is no washing machine. There's no heat or hot water. Well, there's heat if you build a fire. There's hot water if you put a bucket of water above that fire. So those of us who live here in the West, or who have Western lifestyles, generally live in a relative degree of comfort. And there is a big downside to that, because no growth happens in comfort. If you're comfortable, why are you going to seek to change your situation? You have to be uncomfortable in order to change your situation, in order to grow. If you're comfortable, you won't. You'll never leave it. I've had friends that I've known for years that I've talked to who complained about things in their life that they'd like to do this, they'd like to do that, but they don't ever do, because that would mean that they'd have to be uncomfortable. Maybe they want to do things. Maybe they'd like to do more, start their own business, finish that project, learn a certain thing, become a certain way. But that means they would have to be uncomfortable, and they've reached a level of comfort that they can exist. They can go home and they have their couch and their television and their chair and the warm air in the wintertime and the cool air in the summertime and cold drinks and plenty of food. And if they don't want to cook, they can get takeout, They don't want to give up that, because in order to grow, you have to be uncomfortable. But we weren't put on this earth to stagnate. We weren't put on this earth to just exist. That makes no sense, right? Even if you are not a spiritual person, which, there's plenty of people who aren't. But if you are a scientific person, the universe has order. The more people that study the universe and the science of it see that there's an order to it. That order does not come about just randomly. there is something more to it. And it wouldn't make sense for us to be here just to exist. So there is more to our lives, and from a spiritual point of view, it is for us to become more than what we are, right? To become spiritual beings in these physical bodies, because when we come from the realm that we were where our home is, as spiritual beings, as beings of energy, and we come into these physical forms, we go from an unlimited form to a limited form. And our task here is to transcend that form and be able to live that spiritual life in this form, right? That's the challenge for us. That's what the ancient yogis look to do, right? The practice of the ancient yogi, the practice of the Vedic, was very austere. Those are the ones you see, in commercials where they go to visit a yogi living in a cave standing on his head. As I've mentioned before, that's not too far off from the truth. The ancient yogis, the Vedics, the ones who lived that strict yogic lifestyle, looked to be able to wear their body down so much, to be uncomfortable so much, that they could release their spiritual side because they believed the physical encumbered the spiritual. So postures like we do in yoga today, where we do our vinyasa and we flow from one to the next, that's not how they did it. They would go into a posture and stay in it for hours. And I remember in one of the books I read about the roots of yoga, they talked about a posture called the bat penance, where they would hang upside down from a tree like a bat, and they would stay in it for hours. Because what they're doing is they're trying to weaken the body so much that they unencumber the physical, they unencumber the spiritual, releasing it from the physical. Of course, this is where the Buddha comes in later, as I've mentioned in other videos, that he realized this was an unsustainable practice because you'd have to weaken your body so much that you couldn't survive anymore before you reach that point. So you then have to re-strengthen the body by eating and resting, and then they would weaken it again. And it was this endless cycle. You could never achieve it, where the Buddha looked to maintain that middle way. But that's what these practices were originally about. The postures that we do in yoga are generally uncomfortable, right, for the most part, and they have to be. You won't grow if you're comfortable. You need to be uncomfortable, and part of that is being bored, right? There's times that you're going to be bored in life. Embrace it. That's what it comes down to, is embracing being uncomfortable, embracing being bored, right? Paying attention to what is going on. I've been sick badly for the past week. I would have liked, of course, to have not been sick. I would have liked to have been able to get through that very quickly, but my body's going to do what it's going to do, and the illness that I had was as virulent as it was. I have to ride it out. And I have to pay attention to what it does in my body and where it is, and be present in it and be uncomfortable. And eventually it passes. Excuse me. So, being uncomfortable, being bored, right, as one of the things of being uncomfortable, is important for growth. But we have to learn to embrace it. If we always seek comfort, if we always seek ease, don't expect your life to change, right? Now, I'm not talking about living the life of those Vedics, of those austere yogis. I'm not talking about sleeping on a bed of nails, or, walking over hot coals, or denying yourself regular meals because, you're trying to be as uncomfortable as possible. I'm not talking about extremes. I'm talking about just in our life, that if we want to grow and we want to become more than what we are, we cannot avoid what is uncomfortable. You have to embrace it, you have to accept it, and realize that it's okay that you're that way. Again, as my mother said, it's okay. Be bored. It's okay to be uncomfortable. Embrace it, pay attention to it, watch what it does in the moment, be present in it, and then that's where the changes will begin to happen. So, that's enough of my party girl voice for this week. As always, take from that what serves you, get rid of the rest, but don't take what's comfortable and leave what's uncomfortable, because we need what is uncomfortable to serve us. Thanks again for watching. Namaste.